We're going to move it on to our next speaker. So we got Ben Askren coming up right now. You know who he is. But right now he's going to be talking about thinking 3 or 4 steps ahead in technique. I loved when I saw his special on Flow Wrestling talking about this, where he said basically he was playing chess while his opponents were playing checkers. And when he explained this, I said, wow, yeah, I was definitely playing checkers out there, and he was playing chess. So that's an important thing. We want to learn from the best, so that's why we have him. You guys know Ben Askren, UFC fighter, Olympian, 2-time Hodge Trophy winner. You guys know him. Here he is. We're super excited to have him. Ben.
What's up, Gene? How are you doing?
Good, good.
You guys had a good day so far?
So far, so good.
What number speaker am I? Like
I don't know.
7,
We
6?
started at 8 a.m., so 8. We had 2, 4. It's got to be like, I don't know, around 10.
I saw you getting. I saw you guys getting started when I was getting started with FRL this morning at 8:15 a.m.
That's it.
Yeah, nice, awesome. What's the best thing you learned today? Not to put you on the spot, but
it would depend on the topic.
On the spot. Okay, fair enough. That was an unfair question, my man.
Here you go. I'll take it.
Oh.
Fear not the lion managed by sheep. Fear the sheep managed by the lion.
Oh, who told you that?
Lions win. Joe Galli.
Oh, that's a good one.
Tronic, he said they're a $7 billion company. They're getting the $9 billion, COVID or not.
That's awesome. I love it.
That's it.
Yeah, I was actually speaking. Not to go way off topic. Yeah, I was speaking on FRL today about how important I think fearlessness is. And while many people, if you ask them that question, they would say they value it a lot, but very few people actually teach fearlessness in their children or their athletes, right? Most people want to actually rule by fear and keep people from making mistakes rather than just have them being completely and totally fearless in everything they do. And then, hey, if some mistakes were to happen, we'll figure it out afterwards and make it happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool. So, you know what? I'll talk about what you brought up of kind of thinking through the whole spectrum of technique, and then I just made a whole bunch of notes about stuff. So we've been in the Wrestling Academy game for 9 years now. Max actually moved to New York. So Max, my brother, also an NCAA champion, moved to New York, 2010. To coach, and he started a wrestling academy there. He said, hey, why don't you guys do the same thing back home? So we opened an academy for our coach Messenbrink, who was a high school coach, who I was not yet living in Wisconsin. I moved back shortly afterwards there, and now we've been at it for about 5 years. We have now five separate wrestling academies which all operate on their own within the state of Wisconsin. It's going really well. We're like you said, Jeff, they're doing their best numbers. We're also doing our best numbers ever this year, despite being Corona. It's really bizarre. But, yeah, I mean, we're having a great time at it. We love it. We enjoy it. I'll give some feedback on technique, and obviously that'll kind of go into some of the things that we really preach at our academy. So, thinking ahead in technique for me, I was able to kind of see the whole chessboard, but I obviously didn't see the beginning, right? And a lot of it was just I was having great coaches, and I was moderately obsessed with the sport. So I watched a lot. I was just completely and totally into it. And it wasn't really till I went to college. I had not had a lot of success younger, but by the end of my high school career, I was pretty successful in high school. I went to college. I was not good. I was losing everyone in the room, and there was a huge amount of frustration on my part. And it was just like, okay, how do I achieve to the levels that I want to achieve? And, what I noticed is for your typical things where people think of athleticness, I really struggled, whether it was in the weight room or on sprints. I was just so far behind everybody. And I was actually a takedown guy in high school. I set the state takedown record twice. And so it was like, that first year while I was redshirting was a huge part of discovery of like, okay, well, how do I beat these guys? Can I up my athleticism to the level of them? And, for me, kind of the answer was a resounding no. I was surrounded by guys who were just so much faster and so much stronger, weight room type strength. And so I started kind of really exploring positions. Mike Ironman was like, they didn't have RTCs back then, but he was like the freestyle club coach. So, he got me kind of started on some of the outside of the box thinking. And so really I just started kind of inspecting each position, position by position, inspecting them and trying to figure out where there were flaws and where there were holes and try to think through it. And then, eventually I ended up finding a whole bunch. And, the part about this is kind of that fearlessness. I obviously made a whole bunch of mistakes. There's, if I found 10 things that work, I probably tried 50 things that didn't work, so it was trial and error, and I wasn't afraid to make mistakes. And, I know one time, I mean, so I always think I'm lucky that I had the college coach I did, because I think a lot of college coaches said, stop doing that dog shit that you're doing, that you're doing over there. You keep getting put on your back. But one time, one of the coaches said, you kind of get put on your back a lot of practice. I said, don't worry, I'm not going to do that in a match. I'm just trying to figure something out right now. And he's like, okay, go for it. Okay, go for it. And it wasn't, they just let me run with it. And then obviously it took time, but I started having a lot more success. And the following year, I really started putting things together. And then they kind of, realized I was having success with it. And I started bouncing it off other minds in the room and saying, hey, I'm doing this. What do you guys think about that? What? Oh, you stopped me when I did this. How do you do that? And, we really just had a bunch of kind of great minds working on the project. And, we were, like I said, we were kind of, or what Gene said, I feel as though when I went to the NCAA finals against Jake Herbert, I was 3 or 4 steps ahead of where he was at. He was on steps 1 and 2, and I was already seeing to step 3, 4, 5, or 6. And that was, allowed me to have a great advantage on pretty much everyone. And then, to this point now in 2020, a lot of people have caught now, and some people still have not caught up, but a lot of people have caught up. And so I think that's just kind of the way I think about technique. And so I'm going to roll that right into just that thought process into my academy, because, you guys, I'm sure people that are listening to this, there probably are a few athletes on the call, but a lot of you guys are coaches. So you're probably thinking, okay, how's that applicable to, my kids that I'm coaching? And so for our kids, we actually have it down, kind of levels 1 through 6. So think of level 1 as the total beginners. Level 6 is your really high level high school wrestlers. And then we kind of have our stuff broken into 4 categories. So you have your teaching, where, you bring them in and sit down. Hey, this is how to do a single leg. You do this, boom. Number 2 would be your drilling. Number 3 would be your sparring. And number 4 would be your live. Okay. And so your sparring is something that at a high level is very useful, because it allows you to have an exploration of certain positions. But at a beginning level is, I would say, probably at best a waste of time. Like the new kids, they're just not going to get a whole lot out of it. They don't know what the hell they're doing. So we don't waste time in there. So, our chart, actually, I think I might have one. Give me 10 seconds. I'm pretty sure I have one in the office.
This is great stuff. Ben really is one of the masterminds of wrestling, and just a very different take on the sport. And every time I listen to him talk about technique, I learn something else. And it's like, kind of like, what was the story that if Abraham Lincoln was asked how to cut down the tree, he would spend the first amount of time sharpening the sword? Well, that's what this is. This is sharpening the sword, or sharpening the axe. Go ahead, Ben.
I got it. I found it. I knew I had it. Okay, so I'll just, can you guys see the whole thing? I'm trying to scoot it back. Okay, so this is our chart, right? So the black would be the teacher. You can't see it, Gene?
No. Can you share it on your screen? Do you have a thing on screen?
You know what? I might. Well, I'll just give you the
whenever. Yeah.
Here's the breakdown. The black is the teaching, and you see it goes down, right? The light gray is the sparring, and the sparring goes up. So think about that. So in your very early your time with the kids, you're going to spend a whole bunch of time teaching, because the truth of the matter is they just don't know anything, right? They just don't know anything. And so we spend a gigantic amount of time teaching. And I guess one of the things that I think maybe I'll talk about this in a different segment, but the fact is we don't really encourage our kids to compete at all at a young age, which means they don't really need to be ready to wrestle. So we don't need to go hard. We don't need to drill hard. We don't need to wrestle hard, because we don't tell them to compete. So for that first, 3 or 4 years or so, we're really just worrying about teaching them moves. And that's it. So we're spending a gigantic amount of time teaching moves. And then now as we get older, the teaching goes down and down and down. And well, part of it is because, you've already taught them so much. So, by the time they get to be really good, it's like, well, how much more can you really teach them? And, there's only a limited amount of wrestling moves, right? There's only going to be a finite amount. And then the drilling stays, relatively the same at about 20% of practice. We usually do this to warm up and cool down. And then for our better groups, almost all of it is sparring, right? Which is, like I have for level 6, 50% of our practice is sparring. So, hey, one guy shoots a high crotch spar from there, right? Or, underhook or seatbelt, the leg in the air, because we want them to focus a whole bunch of time. And so, we'll bring it in, we'll say, Hey, what are the questions you guys have from there? Or this is something I see a whole bunch of people doing. A lot of people are, not getting their body flat when the guy goes to crack down, or they're not sitting in the corner right. And so we'll talk about it. We won't teach it step by step, like 1, 2, 3, right? It'll be more like, hey, this is something we're seeing. Maybe this is something to, think about when you're going out next time. And then the kids will literally give us feedback, right? The kids give a lot of feedback, and they know it's it's a place where they're safe, where they can say, well, what about this? What about that? And I'm not going to say, hey, you're a dummy, shut up, right? That's never, ever, ever going to happen. I'm going to say, well, that's interesting. And, then we'll discuss. And so that's how I think you get 3 and 4 and 5 steps ahead, is by thinking in this manner where you're just going out and you're making it happen, right? In the sparring. And so the big difference there between sparring and live, in my opinion, would be in live, maybe you're not totally afraid to make mistakes, but there is a bigger downside, right? You can get smashed if you are taking a bunch of risks when sparring and you're going a little lighter. You're going to get to execute. And you and your partner are, I don't want to say, not to say working together is maybe not the right term, but you are both trying to get better at specific positions, so you can kind of bounce ideas off each other in that thing. So that's kind of a huge thing with us. And I know that was a huge thing that I was doing at Missouri, and that was one of the reasons why I think we were so far ahead. So. Go ahead, Gene.
Just quick question with that.
Yeah.
But what do you do to tell your athletes so they don't make it competitive, and then one starts trying to go too hard?
Yeah.
You have them watch it first.
It just takes time, right? It takes time. So, but the fantastic thing is, once you have it developed, it's developed. You know what I'm saying? So, okay, so like our best 9th through 12th grade group, they're really good at it. Like, I don't have to, boom, go spar, boom, they're there, And so when, obviously, at some point, the 12th graders will leave, the new 9th graders will come in, and they see what they're doing. If there is, if there's 1 or 2 people in the group that are not abiding by what the group thinks they should be doing, those guys will get called out. There's one kid, he actually won a state title this year, but he's finally getting better at sparring, but he was notorious for not sparring, and everyone would tease him, and that was just kind of how it goes. So I think the group kind of enforces that mentality. But yeah, obviously, when you first start to do it, it is going to take a lot of patience, because it will not happen easy, right? Kids are by nature competitive, especially when they've told their whole lives to be competitive, not to give an inch, to try to win every situation. By nature, they're competitive. And so when we talk about fearlessness, well, if you're told you always have to win, you do essentially have a fear of losing, right? And if you're going to try new things, you're more likely to lose. So inherently, you're then also afraid of trying new things. If you're afraid of trying new things, you're never going to get better. So, we talked about, like, fearlessness is one of the main characteristics of an athlete that I want to coach. It absolutely is. And that's something that, if you really teach them to spar well, they're never going to be afraid of taking chances and taking risks. And then they're also never going to be afraid to ask questions. That's one thing that I love about the oldest group I coach, and it's kind of the guys that have been with us for a really long time, is like, they're not scared to look like a dummy and say, hey, what about this? They're not thinking, oh, the whole group's going to laugh at me, everyone's going to think I'm stupid. No, that's just what we do, and I think that's a huge part of building that fearlessness in guys.
Excellent. And just last thing I'm going to say, and then
I'll good. I'll keep going.
It's a spark in my mind. Tim Ferriss spoke about this, I think, in the 4-hour body, something like that, about spending time in the transition from one position to another position. And when I heard that, I was like, this is Ben Askren.
Oh, yeah.
This is what he does that other people don't do as much. Can you talk about that? And then I'll leave you alone.
Yeah. Well, so, I think when you spar, obviously there's things you can do, but you can wrestle things to their completion, right? You can wrestle all the way through it, and you can see all the things that are going to happen, as opposed to just like, we're just going to drill, and we're drill the same move over and over and over again. And in that there's no transitionary period, right? Whereas in sparring, you may start in a high crotch, but who knows where you're going to end up. So you're going to work through a whole bunch of stuff. Starting out leg up single, that's where you're going to start. But again, who knows where you're going to end up. So you are, in fact, going to have to work through everything the whole time. And so, I think that's gigantic. And that's kind of, again, with the best, I feel where, I try never to say best group I coach, but they kind of are. So just at my academy, Heartland, we have 4 separate groups of kids. And so we're able to segment them by size and by skill level and that kind of things. We are doing very little drilling, very little. Like 20. So let's see, 20% of practice, 90 minutes. Yeah, about 20 minutes of drilling is what we're spending. I'm doing, mostly sparring, a little bit of live here and there when I need to ramp up the intensity, but spending so much time and I force them to wrestle positions all the way through their completion, not just kind of halfway there. So I think it's, yes, transitions are huge. Okay, so does anyone else have any questions on technique? Otherwise, I'm just gonna kind of circle back to some of the other things that we do. I know I saw a chat here. I saw a question popping up. Drilling and sparring advantage, allocating time to each. Okay. Did I purposely ambush Jordan Burroughs by inviting Kyle Dacon? That's funny. I did purposely ambush him because I thought it was gonna be hilarious, and I always wanted to do that for my entertainment. Okay, so I answered that one. Brandon, so the difference, again, I think I explained the difference between drilling and sparring. Again, the better the group is, the more you can allocate time to sparring. And I think probably the more important it is to allocate time to sparring. If they're not so good, right, obviously they can just drill, right? Keep drilling those positions till they build a base level of skill. Let's see. And then the last one, I know Jason. What's up, Jason? Is white belt mentality something that these kids already have, or is there something that you try to preach to cultivate it? Yeah, I mean, so we're totally the beginning. I guess white belt mentality is kind of also called beginner's mind. I mean, part of it is I try to emulate it for them, right? I'm not too proud. Listen, I won 2 Hodge trophies and I went to the Olympics, and I'm not too proud to say, hey, listen, this kid does that move better than me. Come up here and show it. Or when I'm answering a question about a move, say, well, here's what I think. What do you guys think? Right? And so I'm emulating to them the fact that I'm open to any and all of their ideas. And will I push back and I'll say, I don't think that idea is so good. Maybe that's not a great one. Maybe this is why. Maybe you should do something better. But I feel like I try to stay totally open. So we try to emulate that to our athletes. And, if they can see us doing it, it's I think you just said that, Gene, right? If you said, Gene, what was the thing you said about the sermon? What you speak is less powerful than what you do. Is that what you said?
Yeah, there's some kind of poem or some kind of story that says, I'd rather see a sermon than hear one any day.
Yes, that's so what they see you do is more powerful than what they hear you say. So we try to emulate that, open mind, beginner's mind to our athletes. I think that's huge. Oh my God, you have 2 different places for questions. I just clicked another one. Okay, so I'm just gonna go back to a different I kind of made a list of the most important things I want to talk about today. The number one that I have on my list, and this is like I've been telling people this is our secret, and I really genuinely think it is we love it and we get kids to love it. And that is so important. And I feel like there's so many people in wrestling who are just so worried about teaching kids that it's tough or whatever. And you can do that eventually, right? But in the beginning, it's just really trying to get kids to show up the next day. And they keep showing up over and over and over and over again. I'll tell you what, if they show up for 5 years straight at our program, they're going to be pretty good. They're going to be good. I mean, that's just right. And then some of them are showing up for, well, we have been open 12 years, but theoretically, eventually it'll be 12 years from the time they're in kindergarten to the time they're senior in high school. They're just going to be good. So we try to make kids love it. And I think that was also spoke about in the book, The Talent Code, which is kind of, I got a lot of ideas from that book. I think it's a great book. If you have not read that book, I would spend time reading it. I mean, it's such a fantastic book. And that's like kind of our secret. Our retention is through the roof. I know retention, USA Wrestling put out the retention rates, and it was 59% year over year, which in my opinion is low. And I think ours is somewhere around 90. So, I mean, like literally the secret is getting kids to love it. And what I think a lot of coaches make mistakes is they try to grind kids. They want to show kids how tough wrestling is, and they want to make them tougher, which is, it's a noble motive. But when kids don't have any vested interest in the sport because they're just trying for their time, they're more likely to say, that sucks. I don't want to do it. Right. And so then I told you, as you know, in our little kids program, for example, for the first 4 years, we don't even really tell them to compete. We don't really wrestle barely any live. We have to do like 5 minutes of like fun scrambles at the end of practice. Right. And so by the time they're 5 years in to wrestling, now they have a vested interest, right? They've already invested 5 years. Right. And so when we start to make it a little harder, they're not worried about it being hard because they already have a vested interest of 5 years. I mean, that's so important. And I think a lot of coaches want to do that right away, like day one or week one with their kids. And it's like, I think that's just such a turnoff. It's something we really, really, really push back on. Let's see what else. So I guess I already spoke. I was going to speak about keeping people open-minded. Kind of answered that question that you guys had, and I kind of spoke about that already. I think that's huge because so many kids, and right, I don't see this a lot in our club because even I try not to act like this, but they think they're so good or they know everything or they don't need to learn anymore. And it's like we don't want kids to start getting that mentality. We want all these kids, no matter how good they are, to keep wanting more information. And that's like the really important part of how I got good, how Max feels like he got good. And even we had the best kid in the country this year, Keegan O'Toole, number one in any weight class. And he asks questions every day. He is not ashamed. He'll raise his hand and ask a question, about anything he has trouble with. And it's just when we have that happening in the room, everyone kind of looks up to that. I said talent code. To talent code, and he wrote another one. What's his culture code, which is also really fantastic. So the talent code and the culture code are really, really, really good books. Gene, have you guys read those?
The talent code. No, I read Blinkist. I read the Blinkist on all those books.
Oh, real? Oh, yeah, that's your deal. You read Blinkist.
That's right, because the self-help books started getting overwhelming after a while. After I read a whole bunch, I was like, I'm just going Blinkist, and I got the easy ones. Got the 10. What do you call it? The 10-minute.
Yeah. That's all. That is awesome. That's a very efficient way to get things done. I just got another question. Eric Spencer, how many kids would start us as a first-year wrestler? So obviously that would be a big advantage we have when we talk about retention rates. Is we don't have a huge amount of first-year wrestlers. We do have some with, like I said, our Ninjas program. That's our 5 through 9-year-olds. Pretty much most people who join that class, that will be their first time wrestling. And so we have some, but the number probably, obviously, especially when they join as a 10-year-old or 11-year-old or 12-year-old, the number of those kids who have not wrestled before it's some, but it's not all that big. So yes, that would obviously be an advantage to retention for us, is the fact that they already do kind of have a vested interest by the time they come to us. So yes, obviously that's a little bit biased towards us. How do you keep it interesting with kids who think they don't need to learn anymore wrestling and simply become complacent? I mean, that's, like I said, that's one of the things that we try. We try to just have everyone keep an open mind. And man, I can't really think of, so obviously we have 5 different academies. So I'll just speak of the kids I coach the most frequently. We have very few that are closed-minded. I mean, very, very few. It's a really small number. And it's because when the best guys in your room are open-minded, everyone looks up to them and they try to model that behavior. So, I don't really see that. I don't really have to deal with that problem all that much. I mean, one of the things, actually, you guys see the mountain back here. And someone asked what the symbolism was of it, or why we use a mountain a couple weeks back on FRL. And the symbolism is that obviously, number one, it's going to be a long climb to get to the top. But number two, and this is not a great mountain, right? We have a different one on camera, but there's all these false peaks, right? So if you're climbing this mountain, you think you get to the top, right? But you're not really there, right? Then you get to the top, and you're like, oh, damn, there's a lot more mountain to climb there. And then there's a lot of these things in wrestling. Kids might look up to being a youth state champion, and think that's kind of the top of the mountain to get there, and then they think they're the freaking man because they want a youth state title, and without ever realizing there's a really long way to go. And so the other thing, another thing that we do, and we have all American banners up on our wall. You can't be an All-American banner until you're high school age. So we pretty much don't give a damn about our youth competitions. And, that got a lot of pushback at the beginning, but now we're having so much success. We're not feeling a lot of pushback on that. And I think I would say that's probably opposite of the majority of wrestling clubs in the country. The majority of wrestling clubs are pushing kids really from a young age. And my philosophy is, if they're going to be successful, we can make them successful from age, say, 14 to 18. That's still a 5-year window. Maybe we start pushing them at 13. That's a 5-year window or so. So I mean, I think that's big for us, is not really emphasizing youth success. We don't really care about youth success. Obviously, we love some kids who are successful at the youth age, but we are definitely not. We're not going to Tulsa. We're not going to the big Virginia one. We're not going to a lot of the big ones because we just don't care. We want kids to be good in high school, and we preach that over and over and over again. How do we handle overly involved parents? I feel like we do a pretty good job of getting our parents to leave us alone and trust us. Obviously, we're not perfect, and we've had some parents who have been issues in the past. But we do not allow coaching during practice. That just does not happen. That is a very firm rule. And then, I guess also the other thing would just be having patience and understanding with parents, right? Being willing to talk to them and have conversations. And yes, not all of them are agree with you, and some of them I think they know better, and that's right. And you're gonna talk to them. And some of our very best kids, parents have been super hands off. Like, they'll drive their kids places, but they don't say anything to them, right? There's, hey, Ben, you got him. John, you got him. Max, you got him. Whoever the coach is, they got him. Lee, practice plan. Oh, I just deleted it, but I remember it. What does the practice plan look like? So practice plan, I'll just tell you my philosophy. So we do an AWA summit every year where we get all the coaches together, and we'll kind of talk about philosophy. And, we have conversations, between that. But a lot of time we kind of allow coaches to, within reason, obviously kind of structure their own practices. So for me, here's what it looks like. I think of it seasonally. So I think of end of high school season to Fargo. I think of Fargo to Super 32. And then we obviously got the high school season where we don't really coach our kids, and that is our youth season. And so I always just try to, okay, so let me rephrase that. This would be with our older kids. With their younger kids, they're so bad. All younger kids are so bad. We're just worried about getting them good skills. There are skills every wrestler would need. They're going to get a leg attack. They're going to need some defense. They're going to need to get off bottom. They're going to need to stay on top, right? With our older kids, I'll try to kind of as a whole look at what are they not doing well. So like the big one for us right now is, and I'm even watching our college guys, right? The guys who we've now sent to college. We don't move our feet well enough, right? That's just the number one thing. So we've been spending a lot of time drilling and going live in that position. Sparring and going live in that position. And then the other one for us that we've just started spending some time on is some upper body stuff. We don't really spend a huge amount of time there. So another position we've spending. So I try to focus on where are we not good at? And then, how can we focus just a little bit more time there? And obviously you don't want to take all the time off your core areas, say finishing a single leg, getting to the legs, right? You don't want to take that much time off of that, but you do want to, in fact, try to improve in areas where you see as a group you're kind of struggling. And that obviously doesn't mean every kid, but it could mean, you kind of try to take the aggregate of all of them. Brad, if you were a college coach, what percentage of the time you spar? Man, I would be. You know what? I'm so annoyed that Kale never talks about his philosophy because I'm thinking he spars a lot just by the way their kids wrestle. It's probably that 50% sparring, probably at least. I may do, a decent amount of teaching in the earlier part of the season, the October, November. But by the time we're getting to December, January, February, I really don't see any reason why they shouldn't be sparring so much and just, tightening up little things. And then, really the live, I think you maybe every once in a while you could do a decent chunk of live. But I don't think kids need to be doing college kids need to be doing a lot of live on an everyday basis because, it's a long season. Their bodies just shouldn't be doing that. I think it's going to beat them down. So every once in a while I'll do a lot of live. But other than that, yeah, I would say a lot of sparring and then some short, hard goes. Okay, let's see. Dom, sorry for the question. You sparring. I hope you'll answer. Intercity high school or do you not have a middle school feeder program? I mostly get kids that are brand new in the sport of ninth grade, but I do have a handful of advanced adults by the time it comes to junior seniors. Incorporate this into, I think you could incorporate sparring. Obviously, again, if they don't have a high skill level, that makes it significantly more difficult. The thing that I would think about doing then, if you don't have that for a 4-year window, is don't try to make them good at everything. Try to have a couple of skills you're really, really good at, and then so once you get the basics of those positions down, like I will, like for example, I had kids 4 years. I probably wouldn't waste any time scrambling. Like it's a deep thing you need to go into. You need to spend a lot of time to get kids good there. Don't waste time, right? Get them a good single leg, get them a good high crotch, get them a good down block go behind, get them a good sprawl, and and give them a good front headlock man at this position. and then spend a whole bunch of time sparring there. That's kind of how I would attack it. So you could get those kids just drilling. So I would actually just limit the amount of positions you try to get them good at. What was your most influential coach impact? I had a lot of great coaches. You mentioned Coach Pritz. He was fantastic. Like really all the way through, my high school coach was fantastic. John Messerick, my youth coach was great. Dale Borchard, man, all the way up. I just feel like I had great coaches. The one I mean, obviously I'm close to Coach Smith, but I'm also really close to Coach Horton. He was probably the one I was closest with during my time there because he was the coach of the upper weight. So I spent a gigantic amount of time with him. What are a couple examples of things you do to get kids to like wrestling? So I think without going too deeply into this, number one, I love wrestling, right? I love wrestling, right? That's number one. And then, so number two would be, we try to do some, we call it ignition events, or I try to talk about current events in wrestling a lot because I want kids, again, thinking bigger than themselves, right? Not just thinking their youth state championship, that's the end all be all. If I win the youth state championship, I'm the freaking man. I'm done, right? So we try to get them thinking about Spencer Lee or Yanni. So, right, we try to take them to a Badgers duel. We try to have taken kids to the NCAAs before. We've taken kids to the Big Tens before. We've taken them to the Olympic trials before. So we try to do all these type of things to get kids interested in the sport of wrestling. And it's much easier in 2020 than it was, say, in 2011. It was significantly more difficult. So get them interested in the sport of wrestling, right? Not just focused on their own little bubble. I think that's big. Oh man, I'm getting sick of talking. It's a long go. What's the best way to approach running in practice? A small group of high school kids of varying skill levels. How do you make high-level athletes feel they're benefiting from practices when the other kids in the room aren't that close to their skill level? Most kids are relatively new. Man, that's a tough, Adam. That's a tough one. I mean, there's no easy answer to that whatsoever. I'll give you two tactics. Number one would be, get more coaches invested so you can split the groups more ways. So you can maybe send 4 of the good kids off with one coach and they can work on certain other skills that are probably more appropriate to them while the kids are working on, single legs or sprawls or, just really getting base skills down. And the other thing sometimes I do is, if I have that issue, which, again, I have 4 groups now, right? So I'm able to split kids a relatively decent amount of ways. But if that were the case, I would, tell one group, hey, you spar this position or you drill this position. We're drilling this move. And then I might say, hey, listen, I'm going to move on for the more advanced people. The guys who aren't that good, just keep doing that first move we were doing, right? And then the better guys are doing move 2. I might also say, okay, time, if you really, really have this, and don't lie to me, right? Then you can start sparring in this position. If you're not good at this drill, keep drilling, right? And so one group is then drilling in the room. The other group is then sparring that position. And so that's something you can do. Say, well, like single legs, because you can never be good enough at a single leg or single leg defense, right? So you can have one group who's not very good drilling the single leg. You get another group of kids who's better sparring the single leg. So they're spending a whole bunch of time sparring that, which is they're probably going to get a whole bunch out of that. So I think that's something you could do. That would be really good. Let's see. I'm going to answer one more. I have one more question, then I'm just going to kind of make notes. I have a few notes. I just wanted to kind of list those off, and then I'll let you go. Do you think college wrestling should develop MMA style way of advertising? No, I think college wrestling is doing a great job. I think we're doing a better job than we've ever done in the history. Who knows how it's gonna be post Corona, but say this year 2019, 2020 season, there's never been a year with as much wrestling coverage or as good of duels that are quite as good. People are getting it and they're jumping on board. It's awesome. And a lot of it has to do with accessibility, right? Flow, and mostly Flow, but a few other people have made wrestling events very accessible, where they're easy to watch, where my kids can, as soon as we get done with practice on Friday night, they can flip on their phone, boom, and watch a match there. That's huge. Okay, so a couple of notes I just had made for you guys. Build relationships before you push them. So again, when you're starting to push kids, if you have a good relationship with them, you can help them through that, right? Because every kid's going to struggle mentally with wanting to quit when it gets really difficult. If you have that relationship with them, you can look them in the eye and say, "You got this. You can do this." Number 2 would be our second. I wrote these 4 questions as I do the mental Mondays, and kind of probably the biggest 4 questions I have, or categorically. Number 1, kids are scared to compete or feel fear of failure literally in the moment, and that is, as a parent, as a coach, that's all about teaching your kid that, listen, dude, sometimes you're gonna fail. Just go out and compete as hard as you can. I mean, literally, when I take a group of kids to this thing, the only thing I say is give me as much effort as you got, and I'll take care of the rest. Right? Just wrestle as hard as you can. I'll take care of the rest. And if you do that, and I watch you fail and we're struggling, we're gonna get back to practice and we're gonna get better. Okay, so just give me your best effort. I don't want you to worry about anything else. Number 2, you guys kind of mentioned the kids who are they're stubborn, they're stuck on using the techniques they're already good at. And I think this is huge, but trying to correct them without doing an "I told you so," right? So you got a kid who all he wants to do is a head throw, and they're pretty damn good at it, so he gets it a lot. But then he loses the big match, and you don't say, "See, you dumbass, I told you shouldn't just do a head throw every time. That's why you lost." But rather saying like, "Hey man, I've really been trying to help you. Is there any way we can add something else to your arsenal so maybe you don't struggle in these big matches?" Right? The "I told you so" is that's such a turnoff for kids, and you really got to try to use those as infrequently as possible. I think that's kind of a turnoff for everybody, not just kids. Number 3, fail to see the big picture. And this kind of something I talked about that we do with our ignition events, trying to get kids to see the bigger picture of wrestling. Like, oh, I can't just win this U state title or this high school title, but I maybe someday I could be like Spencer Lee or David Taylor or Yanni. Like that. That's a gigantic point for us. And then number 4, kids who are stubborn, kind of circling back to that number 2, but sometimes you gotta let them fail. Sometimes you can't force them to do it your way. You just gotta let them fail, and then hopefully at some point they're gonna be open enough, and they're gonna come back and say, "Hey, Coach Ben, man, I've been really struggling. Can you help me?" And you say, "Yes, I've been waiting to help you for years. Let's go. Let's do this. Let me help you." So I think those things are huge. Casey, so what positions are good positions to sparring with kids that haven't done it before? I wouldn't spar with kids who haven't done it before, right? I would build up their base skill level before we start sparring. Gene, I feel like I've been talking a lot. Is there anything that I haven't answered that maybe you guys are curious about?
It's a different kind of endurance, right?
It is. It absolutely is. I didn't really do very many wrestling camps, but I always remember whenever I start wrestling camps this summer, my voice would always get so worn out because I'm teaching 4 or 6 hours a day, and yeah, it's different.
I had 2 camps in this past year that I did 4 hours straight. It's a lot.
Yeah, it is.
Now, Ben, awesome. Hey, always great information. I always learn a ton from you. I really appreciate you being on. Where do we send people to get more information from you?
Yeah, I'm all over social media. You can't miss me. It's at Ben Askren on everything. I'm getting a new website, which is benaskren.com. Right now, that page will redirect you to our wrestling club, AWA. And so Gene, I got and this, you're probably one of the very few people that know this. I got my first mindset course coming out. It's going to be on how to deal with failure. Obviously, something I've dealt with in the last year, and really, frankly, something everybody deals with. And I think, people are, I don't want to say amazed, but they're like, wow, you handled it really well, especially for a guy who's done so much winning in your life. And yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'm really at peace with my failures, and I realize that that's just part of life. And so I'm trying to spread some wisdom to people.
That's awesome. We want everyone on this call to make sure they get that. So everyone make sure they get it. Check it out. Ben, thank you again. Always great.
Thanks a lot, Gene. Have a great day, guys.
You too. Take care.
Peace.
Bye.
See you soon.
All right. Got next.